You got to understand that no matter what life does to you, you have got to be willing to say to life, I take it. I'm going to seize every moment, every opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of what I've been given. I'm not going to just let those that came before me do this, run this race, walk this out, and just let it stop right there. But I'm willing to be somebody that's going to stand in the midst of adversity. I'm going to be someone that's going to stay there, that's going to wait on God, allow God to shore my feet, and allow him to lead me to victory. Could you imagine if they had stopped? Could you imagine that if those that came after them were not inspired by the work that they did and just let it die with them? Could you imagine where we would be right now? I can't even imagine it. It's bad right now. There are still moments where we face injustices and where we face moments in our life where we're not treated equally. Now, can you imagine though that if everything would have stopped right there, where this world would be right now? What you've got to do is you've got to say within yourself, I refuse to drop the baton. I refuse to let the work that they did go along the wayside. I refuse to be the one that's going to stand by, watch it die, and not say a thing. But I'm going to stand for what I believe in, because I got those that are looking at me, those that are waiting for me to step into my purpose and be who God created me to be. You got to understand there are people waiting for your destiny, waiting for you to walk in your purpose, waiting for you to open your mouth and declare it. There are people out there that are listening, that are clamoring, looking at your mouth, waiting for you to part your lips, to give them direction and to show them which way to go. But if you drop the baton, if you stop right there, if you don't continue on moving, then what's going to happen? You got to trust God. You got to use those ones that came before you as motivation to move forward in everything that God has for you. Don't be a statistic. Don't be a number. Don't be someone that's just living their life. Don't be that individual. Don't be that dude that just stands there and and just watch as everything happens and just let it happen. Could care less. Don't say anything. Say, oh, it's not me. It's not happening to me, so I could care less. But you need to be that individual that when you see things not going right, or when you are in the presence of something or someone that has been wrong, can you be that individual that is willing to stand up and say something? How many parents, how many of us that whenever our child comes home from school or whenever something happens with our child, we'll be the first one that asks them what happened and what they're doing. We'll be so quick to get on the phone or to march right up there to the school to deal with or handle what our children are having to deal with, especially if we realize and know that they've been wrong, or there's something that's being done to them that shouldn't be. You're going to be the one that's going to stand up for them. You're going to go and fight for them so that they can see, never let someone do you wrong and get away with it. You got to continue on your course, continue on your race so that you can be who you are or who you were destined to be. Could you imagine that if you were that parent that when your child came home and that happened to them, that you would just sit there and not do anything? You just say to them, oh, it's going to be all right. Go in your room and everything's going to work itself out. Be ready to go back to school tomorrow and don't worry about it. Don't be that parent. Don't be that individual that when your child comes to you and tells you something that's going on or something that's been happening, and then you sit by idly watching and waiting to see if things are going to get better itself. That's not the way it's supposed to work. When you see something that is wrong, when you see something that needs to be fixed or something that needs to happen, what you need to do is you need to be willing to be that one to stand in it and stand up and let things happen the right way. Jesus endured pain. He endured suffering. He endured the cross. He endured shame. He endured death. Jesus was criticized. He was ostracized. He was pushed to the side. He was depleted. He was mistreated. But he found a way to keep on pushing. You might ask the question, what does that have to do with me? Because Jesus was perfect. You're right. But he's not asking us to be perfect. He's asking us to accept the help that he is giving and use that to race towards perfection in him. God is not asking you to have it all together. Not once did Jesus say, I'm dying on the cross for those who already have God in their life and are living their life the right way. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, I did not come to condemn, but I came that those through me might be saved. In order to be saved, you would have had to be living a life of sin. So Jesus said, I did not come for those who are perfect. I came for those who are not perfect, but who have a heart and are willing to move on to perfection. Jesus says, I am the one who can perfect you. You are perfected in me, says God. And he says, all I need you to do is follow the same path that I did and be willing to accept that. Paul implores them in the text. He implores them in Hebrews chapter 12. He says, when you feel overwhelmed or as if you cannot go any further, he says, play that story in your head over and over again. Look at what Jesus went through. He said, use that as motivation and let it boost you to continue moving forward. I remember when I was in school, when I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to do sports for a while. I wanted to play basketball, y'all. Football was my sport, so I really wanted to play football. Great, avid fan of football. And that's what I wanted to do. My senior year, I said, look, I'm going to play sports my senior year. And I think the reason why, God blessed me so much now is because before my senior year, I couldn't play sports. And my dad would always say, well, we're doing church, we're doing ministry. We need to be in church. We need to do this. And we just don't have the time for that kind of stuff. So I think what God said was, okay, Chris paid some dues when he was young, so I'm going to let him live in the overflow now. So God has blessed me so much. But my senior year, I ran track. And I remember running track. And I remember what would happen is, first of all, in running track, you practice. Before your track meet, you got to have practice. And there was always that time where my track coach would have us run. I mean, you're running track, so naturally you're going to run. He'd exercise us, he'd work us out, but then he'd have us running. He'd have us running. And whether you ran short distance, whether you ran long distance, he would make us run a specific length. You'd have to run that length, whether it was a mile, whether it was 2 miles, no matter what it was. We would run that, and that's just what you would do. But he was preparing us. What he was doing was he was laying a foundation. He was laying groundwork for when the big test came or when that big thing came, we would be able to be successful. You might not win it. Now, I can tell you, everybody, you might not win it, but at least he would set you up for success. And me, I was the type of person who I did not like to lose. It don't matter how many times I ran, but I would always run fast. I'd always run the hardest, and I would make sure that I would never, ever lose. But there was this one guy that I always ran against, and he was even on my team. We ran for the same school. He would always win every race. We would be in the same races, but he would win every race. But I tell you what, I'd always come in second. I might not come in first. He might beat me, but nobody else from any other school would ever beat me. We were breaking records together. My record didn't stand because he come in first. His record was the one. But we were breaking records together, and we all attribute that to our training. To us being trained and us having a mindset that no matter what happened, no matter the adversity that came, we were not going to let it beat us. I remember that, and I'm so mindful of that. And I want you to understand, and I want you to utilize that as motivation and understand that there's got to be preparation. God has been preparing you. God, you were made for this. God has prepared you. God has already, look, you've already been through some stuff. You've already dealt with adversity. You've already dealt with situations. How many of you, especially when you did not know Christ, went through so much in your life? That was proving ground. That was training ground. Well, now that God is in your life, God said, look, you've already been through the worst. Let me be the one to carry you through the rest of the way so that you can have some wins in your life. Wouldn't it be good? Wouldn't it be all right that every now and again you would have a win in your life? Well, what you've got to do is you've got to be willing then at the end of the day to say, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to stop. I am not going to throw in the towel. I remind there was one race where I told you he always came in first. My teammate came in first. I came in second. And I told him, I said, I'm going to beat him today. And what happened was he had gotten sick. And I was like, oh yeah, this is my day. He's not even going to race. I'm finally going to come in first place. I'm going to win this race, because I'm telling you, y'all, I was not willing to lose. So I said, I'm going to be the one coming first. He was having some stomach issues. He was having some problems, and said he couldn't race. So we get ready to race, and here he comes. I'm like, man, I thought you weren't going to race. He said, nah, man. He said, I'm still not feeling good, but I can't not race. We need the points. It was a point system. So those of you that are familiar with track, if you come in, whatever place you come in, there's so many points that your team get. So he said, it's a point system. I said, okay, well, that's fine. But I still knew within myself, look, he's cramping, he's hurting, he's having these issues, his groin is messed up. I'm going to run. I'm still going to be okay. And I led some of this race, y'all. I led most of the race. But at the end, he still came up, and he was still able to beat me. But I always learned from that, you know what? He was determined. And even though I could never beat him, we were on the same team, y'all. We were reaching for the same prize. We were going for the same thing. We were in this thing together. He was not my opposition. He was not the other team. He was not trying to beat me. He was trying to do what was best for the overall team. I came to declare to you on today, you've got to understand the Bible tells us there are many of us that are in the race. He says, but there is just one prize. It don't matter if you finish first, if you finish second, if you finish last. The key is that you finish. You have got to be willing to finish this race. You can't stop, and you can't let it stop you. Now I was a runner. I ran. We were only allowed to run 4 races, but I also was on relay. And dealing with the relay, I love the relay because that was a chance for 4 of us to get together, show what we could do, and break records and do whatever we could do. I remember there was a moment where we were trying to break a record to go to state, and all of us shaved our heads off because we were missing the record by like a second. We shaved our head off just so we could beat that record. But there was also a race that I ran, and many of you are familiar with the 400. That's just 1 lap. Well, it was the 1600. That's where we did 4 laps. It would be a mile. And so what we would do is he put me on the 4 by 1600 where we would run a mile around the track, because I could run short distance and I could run long distance. He would put us on that mile. He would say, you'd have to pace yourself because you got 4 laps you got to go. You got to pace yourself, and you got to be careful so that you don't die out, or so that you don't lose your wind and not be able to kick at the end. Well, in the 4x4, in that race, I was the fastest one in that race, and he always put me last. I was the anchor leg. I was the last leg because he knew, hey, if they're behind, he can catch us up. And I remember where I would be there on the track just waiting for my guy to get around his 4 times so I could come out so he can hand me the baton. And there were many moments. This guy, he would be, and every time he would put the slowest one between us in front of me. And I'm telling you, y'all, he would be in last place. As a matter of fact, every time he handed me the baton, I was likely a lap behind. just how slow he was. And he just methodically, he would run that one way. But you know what? He was like, look, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be racing. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not going to hurt myself, but I am going to finish. He was determined. And every time he would hand me that baton, I would be so upset. I was young. Don't hate. Don't hold it against me. I'd be upset. But what I would do is I would sprint. I would run my 4 laps just so that we could make up ground, so that we could at least finish and we could be good. Now, I'm going to tell you this now. I was good, but I wasn't that good. Those relays, we lost because we lost so much ground. I could not come back. But I remember of the guy that was in front of me, of how determined he was. And no matter how fast or what was coming at him, he did not let it stop him. He did not let it keep him from finishing. Because the key was that if he didn't finish, then the next one that comes after him, who he handed it off to, would not be able to finish. You got to understand that those that go before you, they finished what they were doing. They did it so that they could hand this thing off to you, and so that you could continue to run it too until it was your time, or until it's your time to give it to somebody else. Could you imagine if they stopped and did not make it to where you were to allow you to go forth and to continue to be who you were? Could you imagine that if you were not born, and then you not being born, you're not being able to accomplish everything that you have accomplished up until this point, or everything that you have done? Just imagine that. Imagine if your spirit in God, in heaven, was not allowed to come down here, rest inside of a body, live, and be the determining factor of whether or not somebody else is going to walk in the fullness of what God has for them. Don't even think about that. What you need to think about is this right here. You need to think about it that, you know what, I'm here. Yeah, things have not been going according to plan. I might be behind schedule right now, but you know what? I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to stop. It may even take me longer to get there than it would somebody else. But I'm not going to let this thing defeat me. I'm not going to let this thing keep me from my destiny. I'm not going to let it be the deciding factor between what I do. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, verse 14. Message Bible says, don't get me wrong. By no means do I count myself an expert, but I do have an eye on the goal. I am often running and I am not turning back. Every day is going to present a challenge to you. Every day is going to be a different challenge, but you must be determined to not go back where you came from. You have to be made up in your mind that you are not going to be who they say you are. That you're not going to let what people say, what people do, determine whether or not you're going to be who God says you are. But what you're going to do is you're going to let the one who made you have the final say. You're going to be that individual that's going to say within himself and that's going to be motivated within themselves that even though things aren't going the right way, even though every day the challenge may get harder, it may get more difficult, you may be inundated with these things that you can't get out of, a situation that you can't see no way out of, but check it. You're not going to let it determine whether or not you make it. You're still going to tread water. You're still going to be that one that sits up that's looking for God to lead you to a better place. You're still going to be that individual that is not going to let your child see you give up or give in. You don't give up. You don't quit. You're not a quitter. You're not going to back down from this fight. You're not going to let the odds stack up against you and keep you from what God has for you. But what you're going to do is you are going to be the one that says, I'm sick and tired of this thing. I know what God has brought me from. I refuse to go back. I refuse to be that one that turns around, turns back. But I'm going to ensure that things work out the way that God intended them to. Philippians chapter 4, verse 13 says, whatever I have, whatever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. Don't settle for just anything. God will put people in your life to help you along the way, but you need to know the difference. Don't just take anything. Don't settle. Don't accept anything. Know who you are. Know who you belong to and know what God says about you. And know that on your journey, God is going to put people in your life that are there to lead you to your next destination. Now, I didn't say they're going to be there with you all your life and they're going to be there through everything and they're going to be there to the end, because some people that you walk with now may not be there at the end. There might be some people that you have not encountered yet that you're going to come across, that you're going to come up with. You might see them later and they might only go with you for a season, or they might only travel with you for a moment, but you cannot let that stop you. You can't let that allow you to lose focus. You got to keep your mind on the prize, on the race, where you're going and what God would have you to do, and accept the help that God has given you. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 25 says, all good athletes train hard. It's the Message Bible. They do it for a gold medal that tarnishes, that fades away. But you are not after that. But you are after one that's gold eternally. Something worth obtaining takes time. You are not just in this temporarily, but this is a way of life that has an eternal reward. You got to know within yourself that this is not something that you're just doing to pass time by. You're not just walking in the fullness of what God has for you, or you're not just being who God would have you to be just so next week you could give it all up and go in a different direction. No. You're doing this because you're in it for life. This is a lifestyle. This is a way of life for you, and you wouldn't have it no other way. You've been there. You've seen what it's like, and you refuse to go back. But you want God and you want the blessings of God to flow in your life the way that it's supposed to and the way that it needs to. 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 5 says an athlete who refuses to play by the rules will never get anywhere. You have to let God lead you, and you cannot be afraid to go where he's leading you. You got to let God have control over your life. And you can't doubt it. You can't be fearful. You can't be afraid of what you see or where you see God taking you. What you got to do is you got to trust God and know that God is going to make sure that you make it to the end, that you get there. That the road may be bumpy at times. Yeah, there may be moments where it seems like you've come so far and it was for naught. It was for nothing. There may be moments in your life where it seems like, you know what, I've come this far, but man, it's not worth it. I'd rather just count my losses, give it up, throw in the towel, and go back in a totally different direction. Don't do it. Let God lead you. Let God guide you. Let God take you where you need to go, and don't be afraid to allow him to do it. Make no apologies for what God is doing in your life. Don't you say to somebody else that I'm sorry that God is blessing me this way or that God is taking me down this road. Don't you apologize for it. What you need to understand that if God saw you faithful enough, if God saw that you were capable of enduring and going through what you're going through, then God already knows the finished product. He already knows that you're going to get to the end. He already knows that you're going to be more than a conqueror. He already knows that you're going to be successful and that you're going to make it to the end. You just got to be willing to say within yourself, I refuse to go back where I came from. I will not drop the baton, but I will move forward in God. You got to let God lead you. You can't be afraid. You can't be that one that stands in the shadows. You've already been in the shadows for so long. You've already been saying within yourself, God, when is it my time? God, am I ever going to be next? God, are you ever going to come through for me? Well, I'm here to declare to you today, God is coming through for you. God is saying, I know all about you. I've already paved the road for you. I've already made a way of escape for you. I've already laid it out for you. All I need you to do is to continue running this race. I need you to not give up. I know you're tired. I know you don't feel the best. I know that things are not conducive or the way that you would like it to be right now. I even know that you've been running so long that maybe the soles of your shoes are even beginning to wear out. I realize that your knees are being stressed and it feels like you can't go any further. I even hear you breathing. I hear you laboring. I hear you breathing hard like you want to pass out or like you want to give up or give in. But God is saying, daughter, son, I heard it. I've heard your cry. I have seen what you're going through and I am coming to deliver you. You got to realize that at the end of the day, if you continue to run this race, if you continue to stay focused, if you continue to let God lead you, then God is going to ensure victory in your life. God is going to make sure that whatever you put your hands to, wherever you go, wherever your feet shall tread, God's going to ensure that you are going to be victorious and that you are going to come out on the other side. You got to trust him. You got to believe it. I remember as I was running those races, whether I was in first place, second place, whether I was in last place, one thing that I could always count on was when I was nearing to the finish line, I could see my teammates cheering me on. I could hear them pushing me. I could hear them saying, good job, Chris. Don't give up. Don't give in. Keep on pushing. There were even some that would be in the middle of the track on the grass. They can't get on the track and they get disqualified, but they would be in the middle of the track. And they would be running right beside me around the insides of that track, cheering me on, saying, don't you stop. Don't you do it. You better not give up. Move your feet. Keep on moving. Keep on pushing. Keep on running. And every time I saw them, those moments when I wanted to give up, those times where I said enough is enough, those moments in my life where I felt like it was not worth it because somebody was right there pushing me, because there was somebody right there knowing, telling me within myself, Chris, you can do it. All you got to do is keep moving. Don't even look down. Don't even worry about where you're going. Don't worry about what's beside you. Don't worry about what's behind me. They said keep on going until you finish. And even before it was all over, before I knew it, I made it to the finish line where they were there to greet me with whether it was a hug, whether it was a handshake, whether it was a high five, but they were right there to greet me because they knew that we finished and we did not give up. You got to understand, every time you go through something, every moment that you have been experiencing, everything that you've gone through in your life, there has been somebody right there cheering you the whole way. The Apostle Paul said in Hebrews chapter 12, those first 3 verses, he said, lay aside every weight, but he said, look at those witnesses that are standing beside you, that are moving with you, that are going on with you, cheering you on, telling you, look, I made it this far, you can make it too. They're right there telling you, don't give in, don't give up. Keep on pressing, keep on pushing, keep on trusting God, keep on moving. I can even see Congressman John Lewis, the Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian standing right there telling you, don't give in, don't give up. Yes, it may get tiresome. Yes, you might feel like you're not gaining ground, but if you continue to be the best version of yourself, even if you don't see the end, somebody after you is going to take that same passion, that same grit, that same determination, that same focus, that same get up and go, that same get at it, that same let me get up from here and let me get moving, that same motivation that you got, somebody else is going to take it and they're going to run with it. But you can't give up. Coming to a close, during the sit-in, Congressman Lewis led 40 House Democrats on the floor of the House of Representatives. He called attention to Congress because he was not pleased with what was going on. There was a lot of gun violence going on. He was not pleased with it. So what he did was he said, look, I'm going to show these young representatives how this thing is done. Because they were wanting to fuss, they were wanting to yell, they were wanting to do all these different things, and they were wanting to go and do this. John Lewis stopped him and said, no, let me show y'all how it's done. Congressman Lewis then went inside where the floor was at, where the House of Representatives were, and he said he demonstrated a sitting. It said he sat down. Said he stayed right there, and he sat there, and he said he proclaimed this. He said, we have been too quiet for too long. There comes a time when you have to say something. You have to make a little noise. You have to move your feet. He said, this is the time. I came to speak to you. Stop settling for anything. Take ownership of your life, your situation, your family, your finances, your stability, your mind, and do something where you are right now. Take advantage of the opportunity that's been given to you. Because there are people that were before you that did not have this opportunity. Take advantage of it. Seize that moment. Seize that opportunity. And do the best that you can with it. Stop complaining. Stop trying to figure out, is there an easier way to do this thing? Stop it. Buckle yourself, buckle down, do what it takes, do what you got to do what you need to do so that purpose, so that destiny can come out of you. And so that those around you can see it and it can move them into what God has for them as well. Don't drop the baton. Take that which those that came before you, take it. Do with it. Make them proud. Make us proud. Don't stop. Keep moving until you see something